Falinski Gorman. Maybe Patrick's had a promotion. Patrick Gorman and Jason Falinski join me. I should be gentle with you. Jason, you're in lockdown and you're teaching. Are you Mr. Falinski today?
Damn right I am, Tom, and don't you forget it.
All right. Well, you know, you're not really doing homeschooling unless you have an accidental star appearance from one of you, from your only pupil, I should say. So we'll see if we do see her later on in the program.
I'm only allowed loose on one person at a time.
Patrick Gorman, any advice for Jason Falinski?
Well, I think the Falinski homeschool has a fabulous economics teacher. I just wish that the Prime Minister and the Treasurer would listen to Jason more often.
There you go. More.
He's always trying to get me into trouble.
He certainly is. Hey, you get yourself in enough trouble, so, you know.
That's true. I don't need help.
Yourself to thank. Lockdown for another 2 weeks. Northern Beaches, how many cases are we at the moment in the Northern Beaches through this outbreak, Jason?
So we have 2 cases on the Northern Beaches, both of which have been linked to known sources. So essentially pretty close to zero.
So is it feeling proportionate, your lockdown from the Premier?
Look, it's not, and that was a leading question, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Tom. But I think, you know, when you look at the benefit cost analysis of these lockdowns, it becomes pretty clear that we need to be about suppressing the virus, not the freedom of people. And when we go into lockdowns, you end up in a situation where you're hurting children who are not at school, and in some cases you're hurting them extra more by getting them taught by me. And secondly, people who can't go to work and businesses that can't trade. So when you're in an area, and it's not just the Northern Beaches, it's large parts of northern parts of Sydney, the Central Coast, Illawarra, Wollongong. I even generously said the other day that I thought that Stephen Jones should be let free.
What do you think, Patrick Gorman? You could free Stephen Jones, but you have to free Jason Falinski as well if you agree.
Well, Tom, I'll just say I hope that everyone in New South Wales is free as soon as possible. And obviously there's some small encouragement out of the numbers today. That's good news. I agree that, you know, everyone hates lockdowns. They're horrible. All of those terrible things that Jason just outlined. The sad truth is that they work, and at the moment, until the vaccine rollout is actually properly up and running, it's all we've got.
Yeah, well, I suppose that might be true. What about the extent to which vaccines are being used, I guess? How do you reflect on ATAGI advice, Jason, that basically meant AstraZeneca was stopped being used for, first of all, under 60s and then under 50s? They give medical advice to the government. They don't factor anything else in, though. Should this be slavishly followed the way it has been so far?
Well, look, that's one of the principles we set out at the beginning of this pandemic. So you need to stick to your principles. I guess the other thing I would encourage, Tom, is for people to go and look at James Patterson's questioning of the Deputy Chair of ATAGI the other day in the Senate Estimates Committee, where he had to concede that only 34 people in 100,000 will develop blood clot symptoms. Of that, 3% would die, and that number is coming down. In other words, it's more dangerous for you to get a flight to London than it is to take AstraZeneca.
Yes, and factoring that in. So ATAGI doesn't factor in anything to do with lockdowns. Seemingly, perhaps they've underestimated the possibility of Delta to get out into the community as well. Should the government be bold enough to say, we've got this medical advice, it is very cautious in terms of blood clots, and we need to factor in other elements, and we won't be adjusting advice for AstraZeneca? Is that something the government should be willing to do in the future? There could be other strains, Jason, other side effects from vaccines. This issue might be there again.
Yeah, Tom, I mean, the one thing that we know about viruses is that they constantly mutate. You know, I was talking to someone the other day who's got a mate in India who said, wait until you see the Lambda variant. We can't keep going through this process of wait for the next variant. It's bigger and worse and etc. than all the others. What we do know is that in the United Kingdom, where their vaccination rates are approaching 50%, they've used AstraZeneca to do that. They have positive cases of around 30,000 people a day, but they're seeing their rate of hospitalisations continue to decrease.
Just bringing to your attention as well, we've got reports coming in from our colleagues at the Herald Sun that Victoria, or Melbourne in particular, could be headed for a snap lockdown that might be happening, or it's expected to begin midnight on Thursday. Health Department sources said it would be similar to the previous lockdown, so they're hoping from what we know of that, to be quite short and sharp. We will see. Jerome Weimar spoke a short time ago, of course, talking about authorities still working behind the scenes. It's a half-hour by half-hour approach, and there was another possible case at the MCG. So the understanding was the Prime Minister's been briefed on the matter. We'll bring you more information as that comes to hand. You would expect the Premier to be standing up shortly on that if it happens, so stand by for that. Patrick, your thoughts on ATAGI? The TGA approves vaccines. It decides if they're safe or not. But seemingly we've limited use of ATAGI in Australia, of the vaccine in Australia, because of ATAGI, which doesn't factor in anything other than what they believe to be the health risks. Do we need to not necessarily just totally take their advice? Does it need to be filtered through our leaders making decisions on other factors?
I think what has happened over the last year is that we have seen more and more pieces of health advice filtered through other considerations. And I mean, that's definitely been the case as people have had to trade off things around lockdowns and other pieces. I went and read the ATAGI advice this morning in terms of what they said around AstraZeneca, and they said that one of the only reasons they're now re-expanding the advice around AstraZeneca is because of the limited supply of Pfizer. So all of these problems, I don't want to blame ATAGI for it, all of these problems stem from the problem of supply. And that's a problem of supply that was within the government's hands. We're 18 months into this now. We've known for a long time that there were vaccines in development, that we had to have contracts and supply agreements to get those vaccines. We didn't get that done quick enough, and that's why ATAGI is now stuck with these decisions.
Well, that's true. Look, I think just about everyone would agree that you would have bought more Pfizer earlier and had more options earlier and signed up deals when other countries were. But it doesn't change that decision needing to be made then. It might need to be made in the future. We might have side effects from other vaccines and other variants. So what do you say to that, to whether ATAGI should be, just totally followed without any questioning of it?
Well, I'm not going to say that we should allow any individual part of this coordinated response to lead it. The person who needs to lead it is the Prime Minister. He's had his National Cabinet. They are debating these things, weighing up the costs and the benefits. Now, members of my family who've been fortunate enough to be able to be vaccinated, they've all been vaccinated with AstraZeneca. I don't want to in any way say anything on your program that discourages a single person from getting vaccinated, because it's so important that people go and do that. When it comes to the question of who has the final say, ultimately these things do all become values judgments. So we have to accept that it is our political leaders who have the final say through the National Cabinet, the Cabinet, etc. And that's the way it should be. And everything has costs, as was said on the program earlier. Every single thing, whether it's jumping on a plane, jumping in a car.
Yeah, that's true.
Abseiling,
drinking alcohol.
Everything has risks.
Yeah, bungee jumping. That's true, and that's that's
drinking
why
a
we
coffee.
don't have health.
It all has
That can
risks.
have benefits.
Don't you attack coffee?
Big coffee will be on to me if I let you get away with that one. Patrick, I know you're a culture vulture. This story is concerning you, I'm sure. Quite a few venues in Perth have banned people that are performing from regions that have been annexed by China because of a policy that if you identify with countries that have a questionable political status, an unclear one, you can't perform. It can include minority Uyghurs, for example, and this is seemingly at the behest of the WA government. What do you make of this?
Look, it is concerning. Values of freedom of expression, freedom of debate. Indeed, I'm a member of the WA branch of the Labor Party. We have in our platform a belief in freedom of speech. These this doesn't sit right with me. I hope that the Perth Theatre Trust sorts this out soon. We don't want unaccountable trustees trying to involve themselves in complex geopolitical situations. It's much better that we stick to our Australian values of freedom of thought, freedom of expression, and being able to let people, do a dance, have a conversation. There's a whole range of things that make all of us uncomfortable at times, but that's part of living in the free and open society in which we live.
Jason Falinski, you've only got 20 seconds to defend your good friend Mark McGowan.
Look, it's a continuation of the left wing's cancel culture. It's extending to the arts, and it started in universities, and it's more and more broadly impacting and infecting the way that certain people use it while in government.
Isn't this a bit different? Isn't this a nod to...
Oh, you told me I had 20 seconds. What's going on here?
Well, I decided I needed to weigh in. It's a bit different though. Isn't this a nod to reliance on resources rather than what you call... You didn't put the W word in there, so well done, but the left's cancel culture?
Look, the fact of the matter remains that it's all part of the same sort of ideological baggage that you drag into these debates. I mean, Patrick's absolutely right. The fact is that one of the most important things that we did, to misquote Voltaire, in the Enlightenment period was to say, I may disagree with your opinion, but I'll defend your right to express it. That was one of the cornerstones of human progress. We are slowly unwinding that in most Western nations. And you can say, well, there are outside forces doing that, or you can say that it's coming from within. Wherever it's coming from, it's wrong and it needs to stop.
I heard the we there for the Enlightenment. So there you go, Jason Falinski taking credit for the Enlightenment. That's how we'll end the program today, Jason. Mr. Falinski, you can get back to class now. Patrick Gorman, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connell.
Talk next week.